Dollars and Cents with Hapo Community Credit Union helps empower our listeners to achieve financial success while living for today and planning for tomorrow. This podcast focuses on financial education, community support, fraud prevention, real-life stories of financial transformation, and much more. Hapo Community Credit Union serves Washington and Oregon with over 18 locations. Bank on more when you bank with us.
Welcome back to another episode of Dollars and Cents, Hapo Community Credit Union's financial literacy podcast. Once again, back in the studio, literally the reigning champion of guest visits that we've got, Jen Kasparek. We're talking fraud again, protection, always good topics when you come in, fantastic stories. Today, we're going to be talking about one that should feature pretty much everybody out there, Facebook Marketplace. I know that we've all been scrolling our For You feed and seen, hey, do you want to buy this random thing that someone near you is selling? I've never personally gone and bought one of those things, but I see them all the time. So today we're going to be talking about that. Give us a quick intro to our topic, please.
Yeah, so we're just going to talk a little bit about how to protect yourself from the physical to the financial, as well as best practices for when you're selling something to make sure that you are going to be able to sell it quickly, efficiently, and that you will get the money that you were asking for it.
All right. And of course, this isn't going to be just Facebook Marketplace. There's a lot of different places that you can turn around and sell things online. eBay, for the longest time, was probably the pinnacle of that, as well as other situations. Probably would assume Etsy probably has something here, but I think they're probably a bit more structured than the peer-to-peer that we're talking about for today's.
Correct. Yeah. I would say things like Craigslist is still out there.
Oh, yeah.
Or like you said, eBay, those kind of I'm selling to you individually, less of a actual store or location. Or where somewhere maybe you could use your debit card per se. So
okay.
Things like that.
So with Facebook Marketplace, with eBay, with Craigslist, typically what we're looking at here is that there is no real validation on who the seller or the buyer are, correct?
Correct, yeah. So you're literally going off of a listing. Hey, I have a piece of furniture to sell. I live in approximately this location. Would you like to buy it?
Approximately is a good statement there, because if you're giving out your actual home address, then who knows who's going to go pick that up, even if it's just in the listing, let alone somebody who's attempting to buy something from you.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, and I think that that's probably a good segue into the first kind of safety thing. Whether buying or selling, use a public space. If you're selling it, don't give these people your address. You never know who's going to show up, what would happen with that. And if you're buying, you don't want to go to somebody's home. Again, if you're not sure who's there, just for safety. A lot of our local police departments, they have actual designated spots where you can meet people. You can trade your selling, buying, your cash, whatever that looks like. And then they're available. They're there. It's typically right in front of the police stations. So That's a great option.
Good place, guaranteed to be a safe location. But outside of that, what we're kind of discussing here is that you want a populated location. So that you're not sitting in a dark alley between buildings and the lights flickering like some strange film scene. We're talking like maybe you pick like a Target parking lot where you've got a lot of people around.
Yeah, like a grocery store. Your Walmarts, your Targets. You'll see those a lot. You'll kind of see those people park side by side. Hey, I've got my little painting. Here's your cash. There's lots of people around to really see that.
I know I've seen a couple of those and thought that maybe something nefarious was happening. Like, I've got the goods. Do you have the cash? When we're talking about those type of transactions, we're also talking, like you mentioned, bringing cash to a situation like that.
Correct.
So that you're not making a payment before you receive the goods.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's, another point that you brought is when you're especially buying something, that always pay in cash. That is your number one best way to do this. I know in the digital market, it's easy to have a lot of those peer-to-peer payments, your Cash Apps, your Venmos. There's a million different ways you can do that, which seems really easy and you would think would be more secure than bringing cash with you. The problem with those is those are really meant to pay your family and friends, people you know. They are in the business of, hey, I want to send money from me to you. That's all they do. They don't regulate buying and selling of goods. So if something goes wrong, if you can't ever meet this person, you're kind of out that money at that point.
I know that eBay and PayPal have a bit of a bit more structure behind their version of things, and part of their investigation and their ability to get your money back comes from the fact that they're a fully built and structured business, which is why we're talking today more about the Facebook Marketplace, the Craigslist, the new digital version of classified ads.
Correct, yeah.
And if I were to transfer money to you, there's nothing guaranteeing that you give me the product that I have paid you for, or that product is even real.
Correct. Yeah. Unfortunately, we do see a lot of scams with that, where you think you're buying something. Honestly, the most common scam is we see people who are selling puppies.
Oh, goodness.
Everybody loves a cute puppy.
Of course.
And if you're looking for one, you see one on, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. Hey, I have to move. I can't keep my puppy. I'm just asking for a rehoming fee. Hey, Cash App that to me. So you Cash App them, the $100 for this cute, adorable puppy, and suddenly they've blocked you. You have no way to get in contact with them. You have no way to, know who they really were on the other side. And at the end of the day, there probably wasn't really a puppy.
See, these type of things are bothersome because I love my dogs. And I did recently get a new puppy a couple years ago. She's about to be 3 years old. And I verified the breeder with a friend of mine who had gotten a dog from them before. But again, there was at least a little bit of that concern in the back of my mind that, like, hey, is this legitimate? This is a purebred corgi, in particular, the Queen's dogs, if you will.
Yes.
And there was a certain aspect of I've never met this individual. They're in a different city, even though they're pretty close. And can you get me a cashier's check for a down payment to hold this puppy for you? And I 100% had that moment in the back of my head that was, am I about to send this person a bunch of money for a dog that I've only seen video of?
Right. And I think that's the thing is, like, they could even show pictures or videos, really, especially if you're buying a dog or something like that. Ask if you can go see it first. Like, hey, where is this dog located? Could maybe we meet at the dog park?
Yeah.
Make sure we're a good fit first.
So when we're talking about these type of things, what, aside from cash, can we do for those situations where, say, somebody is looking for a down payment on something? Do we have any methods that we can use other than trying background check verification, meet the people first, that we can do to protect ourselves?
I mean, I think as a buyer, especially, maybe it's a larger dollar amount item, you don't want to take all that cash with you. You could we do a cashier's check? Something like that would be better. I think in that case, making sure it's local to you is a good way because, I mean, at the end of the day, unfortunately, you can counterfeit anything. So, you want to make sure, hey, yes, cashier's checks typically are good funds. And, but again, making sure it's somewhere local. It's not out of a bank out of Illinois or, a credit union in Florida, like something that wouldn't make sense to whoever you're buying it from.
Okay.
So things like that could be really good red flags. And then I think at the end of the day, just doing your homework, like, does what they're selling make sense for the dollar amount that you're purchasing it for? Or, if things are super, super cheap for some reason, it's almost that too good to be true,
Yeah.
You kind of want to do your due diligence, especially things like Facebook Marketplace. How long has this person had a profile on there? Is it relatively new? Or have they kind of had that long-standing profile? Because typically it'll tell you that information.
Yeah.
Again, those are kind of things to look for and
See
be
if it's
careful of.
a profile that somebody cloned. Maybe it's absolutely somebody that you could search up and find, and it's a clone profile where the one selling it hasn't been around for very long. But
Yeah.
whoever actually has the main profile has been around. So verifying that if you do find one of those, that you verify that the one that's selling the item, that profile has been around for a while.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all kind of really good things that you can use to really identify, is this legitimate? Is it not? Those are really helpful things.
So I know we talked a little bit about how there's some convenient apps out there. In a previous podcast, we talked about the technological advancements in finance. And in particular, one of the things that we discussed was Apple Pay. Apple Pay has an interesting method that they use for doing transactions, where the card that you have on file is not necessarily the number that runs when you actually use Apple Pay. Is that the type of thing that somebody could use in a situation like this? I feel like most places have a pay with Apple Pay type of a thing that needs to be set up ahead of time. So odds are against that being an option here.
Correct. Yeah, I would say typically if you're to the point where they have a card reader, kind of a setup business, that's going to always be a little more safer. But when you're dealing with marketplaces, a lot of times it's not. It's just those individuals. So they don't typically have that kind of thing set up. So then you're looking more at that, again, that peer-to-peer payment where you're, hey, what's your information? Let me send you some money. And again, those are just always safer as long as you know who you're sending it to.
Absolutely. So, excuse me. When we bring and we go to these meetings now, we're going to be bringing cash with us. And like you said, some of these transactions could be a pretty high dollar amount. Obviously, we are going to go alone. We're not going to tell anybody where we're going. This is all sarcasm. What is the best practice for making these transactions? We talked about public spaces, the actual transaction parking spaces that the local police might provide. What other things can we do to protect ourselves?
I think bring somebody with you. It's never a bad idea. Grab your friend. Hey, I'm going to buy. Maybe you're buying a little PlayStation, that might be a slightly higher dollar amount. Make sure people know where you're going if you're not bringing somebody with you. Call your friend, hey, just so you know, I'm going to X location to meet up with somebody. I think those are all really important just to make sure that you have those people around you and kind of that know what's happening.
Yeah, outside of the financial safety and into the physical safety aspect of things. Also, if you're buying something large, you might just want an extra pair of hands to help move the thing.
Correct, yes, yeah. I would say I use Facebook Marketplace. I bought a bunch of stools. You got to bring a friend with you to, hey, I got to get them from my car to your car.
So as a seller, do we have any particular tips and tricks for the listeners about what they can do to protect themselves while selling items?
I think the big thing as being a seller is kind of looking for those people who, hey, I'll pay you extra money for it if you promise to get it to me right now. That's kind of a red flag. Most people are going to ask you for less when you're selling something on Marketplace. Kind of like those yard sales, hey, will you take $1.75 instead of $2?
And we know from previous conversations that urgency tends to be a red flag in a fraud scenario to begin with.
Yes.
Phishing emails, phone calls, they all want you to act right now before you have a chance to think about it.
Yes, correct. I think as a seller too, people, they start asking you, oh, well, can you ship it for me? I'll pay you extra money and that way you can pay the movers. Like things like that where on the surface you're like, well, maybe that makes sense. But then when you kind of really think about it, why wouldn't that person just pay somebody to come pick it up themselves, right? So again, kind of thinking through the process of what they're asking you when you're selling something. Also, when you're selling something, make sure you're not giving out where you are or where you live. Again, kind of using that approximate.
This item that I want to get rid of is currently located at this address. If you don't pay me for it and you just come pick it up in the middle of the night, there's really nothing I can do about it.
Correct. Yeah.
When we're talking about some of these things, we talk about bringing a friend to help you move these items. If we're talking about selling, say, a large item, and we still want to use that public space, we would immediately, my first thought is, well, I don't want to move this thing. If you move it, then come to my house, pick it up, take it out of the house. We still probably want to get that item out to a neutral space to actually sell it, to make the handoff in a parking lot, borrow a friend's truck if you don't have one your own, or rent a U-Haul type of a scenario.
Or something. Yeah, like that. Yeah, absolutely. It's always best that way. You're not giving your address, you're not advertising kind of, hey, I have this thing sitting in my garage, here you go. I mean, I think along with that too is, especially if you're thinking like Facebook Marketplace, people may go and look at your Facebook profile because from the buyer side, hey, I want to know you're real. Mm-hmm. So along with that, making sure like, what does your Facebook profile say about you? Do you kind of say where you live? Have you, shown pictures of your house before?
And this is general online safety to begin with. Don't necessarily go broadcast these things.
Yeah.
There's very many ways to track down information about people online. And if you have a public profile on something like Facebook, the amount of information that you aren't aware that you have published out there about yourself could fill volumes, generally speaking.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I think just generally when you're selling, kind of being a little more vigilant about really looking at what's public, what's private, what could people see about me? Because again, they will probably go look at your profile. Hey, how long have you been on here? Are you a real person?
A
Things
good
like that.
buyer should be following these tips to look up. A good seller should be aware that they will be doing those type of things.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
What other points do we have that we want to make on this topic for people listening?
I think really the only other thing to be aware of is talking about counterfeit currency. Thankfully, I feel like Tri-Cities, we don't have a big issue with that, but it is still around. A lot of what we see is what you would call movie money. So right on the front of the bill, it's going to say made for motion picture. So it's pretty obvious if you give it more than just a quick glance that it's not real. The other one we typically see around here is there will be a lot of pink symbols all over the money. Again, that's money that they use for movies, for training purposes. You can actually buy it online, unfortunately, which is fine if you want to just have it just to play with it, maybe make your own little mini movie. But
or new currency for board games if Monopoly's pink 50s have kind of gotten used up over the day.
Correct. Yeah. But I think so just kind of when you're trading cash, just give it that good look.
And I know that we're talking cash and we're also talking about more advanced payment methods like PayPal and Venmo and whatnot. And while I know that they haven't exactly completely gone away, checks are still a thing.
Yes, absolutely. I would say probably avoid checks. However, if somebody really wants to pay you with a check, maybe offer to meet them at their financial institution.
Okay.
You guys can go in, you can kind of cash the check right there on the spot. That way, you've got your money, they know they're good, and everybody's covered.
Okay. Because one of the main concerns with a check would be an insufficient funds type of a check. If I'm floating a check, as the term is,
correct.
I'm going to go ahead and cash that check, and then the insufficient funds is going to come through, and then all that money that I just added to my account is going to basically get pulled.
Right. And then whatever you're selling is gone as well. So
Correct.
then you're out not only your item, but also the money.
And worst case scenario for the person floating a check is they pay a $20 overdraft fee or something along those lines.
Right.
But odds are, if they're going that far, they're not really working with that to begin with.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So I would say checks are probably your last resort. And again, I would say, hey, can we meet at wherever this check is drawn off of? Go in, cash your check, and then at that point, you guys can exchange.
I was going to say, it makes for a pretty decent neutral transaction spot,
Yes,
as well
absolutely.
as the financial security, if that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any final thoughts for the people?
I think, sell things, buy things, just beware of what you're looking at. And at the end of the day, with all fraud tips, if there's a sense of urgency, take a step back, think about what you're being asked.
Never hurts to take a deep breath and contemplate for half a second to make sure that you're safe. Jen, thank you once again for joining us. And this has been another episode of Dollars and Cents, Hapo Community Credit Union's Financial Literacy Podcast. Until next time.